Hello, hello. All right. So, what I want to talk to you today about is catastrophizing thoughts. I had a client who was really struggling because her mind was creating extra thoughts to be concerned about. So, what are catastrophizing thoughts? It's like, oh no, I'm never going to figure out the right medication for my current issue, and I'm going to be sick for the rest of my life. Then that one thought rolls into, oh my gosh, that means I'm never going to sleep again. That means my eating's always going to be off. That means my weight might keep cycling up. It literally, I use this example with her. I said it's kind of like got a magnetic force and it's rolling along and it's sucking to it other catastrophizing thoughts. And before you know it, you've got this big ball of just nothing but problems. And it all started from one thought. And this is something I see all too often in coaching where people will listen to those what if questions, right? And we covered all this in the Thinking Leads to Eating series, but I think it always can be covered again and again and again because I think people don't realize how easy it is to get sucked into it. So I asked her a couple questions. I said, when these catastrophizing thoughts show up, do you physically feel something? And she's like, oh yes. She says, I immediately feel shaky. I feel, like my stomach, my heart's racing, my stomach is off. I have all these feelings. And she says, and then, I find before I know it, I'm going to get food to help me cope with it. And I feel so overwhelmed. And I said to her, when you start to feel it the very first time, I want you to take out a journal, write it down, just like purge everything that's going on in your head. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to get the right medication. I'm going to be up for the rest of my life. I'm never going to sleep again. I'm never going to get my eating down. My weight's going to keep going up, yada, yada, yada. Write it all down. Then walk away from it and have some things you can go do that will force you to engage your thinking and your hands. So for example, she mentioned going for a walk is really good for her, just getting outside, maybe organizing a closet. For some people, it might be doing things like updating a spreadsheet because you're putting numbers in a graph and it might be something you really have to be meticulous with. It needs to be something where you have to think and do. And what that will often do is quiet down that part of your thinking that's kind of gone off rampant, right? And then I told her, come back to it the next 24 hours or so and go back and ask yourself some simple questions. Because in this 30-minute call we had, she quickly realized all the catastrophe thoughts she had either A, had already gotten a solution, or B, were in process to improving. She had gotten some new medication, things with her dog were improving, but it was one of those things that in the moment, as soon as she got on the call with me, it was boom, 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 all these things are wrong. And that's just how our brain works. It tends to notice all the things that are wrong. It tends to glorify them, make them like the front and focal thing. And then you never really stop and say, is that true? Is it true that I'm never going to get a medical situation figured out? Is it true I'm never going to sleep again? And she could easily go back and see how things have worked themselves out. And typically that is true for all of us, that these things do work out. They just don't work out on the timeline we would want them to. And we can't often see how they're going to work out. Because I even asked her, like 6 years ago, you had a really big medical scare. Did you know 6 years ago you'd be sitting here having this conversation about your medicine, about your dog? She's like, no. She goes, just surviving was my focus. And it's the goalpost always gets moved. So if right now your focus is this medication, not sleeping, but 6 years ago, it would have been finishing up school, surviving another type of medical issue, whatever the thing was. In that moment, you can't see the solution, but your lower brain can't see it either. So it really is irrelevant. What you just kind of need to know is when those catastrophizing thoughts show up, that they really aren't all that significant. They're not all that important. They're not helping you figure anything out. They're just causing you to spin and spin and spin and suck in more things. So I taught her another really great concept, which is don't entertain those thoughts. So what is entertaining? Entertaining is I invite you into my home. I make you comfortable. I try to have you relax and talk to me and share things with me. We don't want that with catastrophizing thoughts. We don't really want to entertain that. So when it starts to ask you those what if questions, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if this doesn't go right? And da 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 da. You're entertaining it. You've invited it in and now it's having a full-fledged conversation with you. Not helpful. It would be better to say, nope, not going to do this, not entertaining you. I am going to go ahead and focus on organizing this desk drawer, filling out my budget sheet, doing my holiday cards, getting my grocery list put together, something that is productive in this moment versus entertaining these catastrophizing thoughts. And I know it would be easy to say, but Heather, then I would be ignoring all these problems, and how will they ever get fixed? You sitting in your home on the couch, going down catastrophe path, trying to figure out what the other problems are that are going to come from this original problem, is not solving the problem. As I was talking to her, what we came to realize was the doctors switched her medication. They saw that the one wasn't working, so they switched her medication. So everything that could be done was being done. The dog was getting medical treatment and getting assistance. What could be done was being done. Our mind spiraling out, creating anxiety and stress for us, the whole thinking leads to eating, which propels us into the kitchen, that is not solving the problem. That is just looping around the problem over and over and over again and sucking in more problems and just having them attached to the original problem. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to say, I'm not entertaining you. I'm going to write all this down. I'm going to come back to it later and say, is that true? And then really, to me, the power of this journaling is when you come back in 6 months and you say, okay, 6 months ago, I was terrified. I was never going to figure out a solution. Now I'm on medication where I can sleep through the night. My eating has been corrected. And it only took 6 months because that's the other thing with catastrophizing thoughts. It's going to put you 5, 10, 15, the rest of your life into the future where everything is terrible. And the truth is, that's never true. The truth is, things get resolved. Again, not probably on the timeline you would want. You'd want it instantaneously fixed. I get that. But it does get resolved in some way or another. Even if it's not in a way you would prefer, it still gets resolved. You move past it. But when we're sitting on the couch lamenting how it's going to get resolved, we don't know. And that's where the pain is coming from, because we can't see into the future. We don't know. So instead of even going there, focus on the present moment. What can I do right now? Choose not to entertain those thoughts, write those thoughts down, then go back to your journal when the whole situation is resolved and document how and when it was resolved. So the next time you find yourself in that same conundrum, you can read back over your journal and say, there was a catastrophizing thought. Oh, look, it got resolved. There was a catastrophizing thought. Oh, look, it got resolved. And you start to notice that all these things that felt like they were really going to be the end of you, the end of your world as you know it, somehow got resolved naturally, right? So just want to help you out because I see this as being a huge issue for people, especially with food, because these catastrophizing thoughts, they just build and build and build, grow and grow and grow. They kind of overtake your life. And before you know it, you're constantly eating to get out of your head. And the truth is, you don't even have to go there. As soon as you know what you're in, pull out of it and say, nope, I watched Heather's video. I know what this is. I can choose not to entertain this. I can choose not to go there, and I will be much better served to do so. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful, and I will talk to you soon.